The tensions between Saudi Arabia and the US are on the rise. What's at stake? Petrodollar. In today's video, we'll be covering how the US is trying to get Saudi Arabia on the same page because losing the petrodollar signals major issues, and what potential outcomes you can expect from Saudi-US tensions. Let's go. In the wake of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, tensions between the United States and Saudi Arabia have resurfaced. Saudi Arabia, being a crucial member of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, it's raising concerns about potential new threats to the petrodollar system, which is essential to the operation of the global financial and economic order. Oil and gas are now being sold in currencies other than the US dollar as Asia emerges as the world's largest consumer of petroleum goods, despite the West's rapid shift away from oil and toward alternative energy sources that are primarily renewable. The petrodollar system, which for years made the US dollar the norm for international trade and banking, has been weakened as a result. In fact, the World Economic Forum of 2023 provided a clear insight into the future that the world's elites hope for all of us. Mohammed Al-Jadaan, the finance minister of Saudi Arabia, shocked reporters in Davos in January by declaring that the oil-rich country was willing to engage in currency trading for the first time in 48 years. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia is being pressured by the US in secret negotiations to keep selling its oil in US dollars. Riyadh's potential to price its crude in other currencies, particularly the yuan of China, worries Washington. After all, they're one of the top 3 producers of crude oil in the world. Riyadh has agreed to sell its crude in dollars since the 1970s, assisting in upholding the dollar's hegemonic position as the world's reserve currency. And now, the minister's remarks are the most recent indication that major countries are planning to de-dollarize the world economy. According to the Wall Street Journal, the US is negotiating a diplomatic agreement under which Saudi Arabia will consent to normalize ties with the apartheid government in Israel. Apparently, Riyadh wants Washington to guarantee that it will always protect it in exchange for help in establishing a nuclear program. The Wall Street Journal reported that the US is using the agreement to pressure Saudi Arabia to put restrictions on its relationship with China, even though the talks are on the Israel-Palestine issue. The newspaper said, quoting unnamed US sources, the Biden administration is seeking assurances from Saudi Arabia that it will distance itself, economically and militarily, from China. Washington's demands for Saudi Arabia, in terms of relations with China, are that Riyadh will price oil sales in US dollars, not Chinese currency. Saudi Arabia won't allow China to build military bases in the kingdom, and that limitations will be put on Saudi Arabia using technology developed by Huawei. Straight to the point. The report also emphasized that President Joe Biden's focus on the deal with Saudi Arabia is a reflection of his view that America has to remain a central player in the Middle East to contain Iran, isolate Russia for its war in Ukraine, and thwart efforts by China to replace Washington's interests in the region. Global trade has been dominated by the dollar for decades, and the United States has been the largest economy, most significant political force, and most potent military force in the world. Is that position in trouble now? Well, economists from other countries are growing increasingly concerned that the US has weaponized this position of power in recent years. They believe that the United States uses economic leverage to maintain its own economy at the expense of the rest of the world, threatens to weaken its currency to win trade wars, and imposes sanctions on warring nations. Unsurprisingly, China, Russia, and other important nations have reacted negatively to these actions. By the way, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any latest news. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin revealed plans to establish a new international currency standard at the 14th BRICS summit. China has also been pressuring big exporters and oil producers to accept yuan as payment in the meanwhile. Chances are that the US dollar's supremacy might drop because of this uprising. You see, the petrodollar system has been a crucial supporter of the dominance of the US dollar. The use of dollars to pay for oil imports maintains constant demand for Washington's currency throughout the world. And as a result of the dollar's stabilization, The enormous current account deficit that the US has been running for years can be partially financed. But on the other hand, the currency of most countries weakens in value relative to the currency used to pay for imports when they consistently run a trade deficit. Exports become more affordable, and imports more expensive when the local currency declines, pushing the nation to balance its trade. However, due to the high demand for its currency, the United States has long been able to sustain a massive trade deficit with the rest of the world. Historically, when Saudi Arabia has had an abundance of dollars, it has placed them in the U.S. banking system, which uses the extra money to support new loans. The excess cash Saudi Arabia's central bank gets from selling crude is also invested in treasury securities, funding U.S. government spending. So, you know now why the rising tensions are sending America into panic mode. But let's not forget that the dollar made up 59.79% of all foreign reserves as of late 2022. Comparatively, the euro makes up 19.66% of global reserves, whereas the Chinese yuan only makes up 2.76%. China's market share might increase 20-fold and still lag the US dollar by a huge amount. Simply put, it's easier said than done to replace the US dollar in foreign reserves. Not totally impossible though. Liking the video so far? Drop us a thumbs up. So, in these times, what can we expect? Will Saudi Arabia stand with the US or lend its almighty hand to BRICS? See, Saudi Arabia and China are major trading partners, and recent years have seen a strengthening of ties between the two countries. Beijing has been purchasing more oil from the Persian Gulf than the US for the past 10 years. 1/3 of China's energy needs are met in the region, which is crucial for the East Asian giant's energy security. Plus, a historic reunion between Saudi Arabia and Iran was facilitated by China. The peace agreement infuriated Washington, which pressured Riyadh to rejoin its aggressive containment campaign against Tehran. And there was a hidden agenda for China too. Their diplomatic success is a step toward Iran and Saudi Arabia joining the BRICS system and organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. That's right, it's a part of a bigger picture of Asian integration. Along with the founding members Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, Iran and Saudi Arabia have formally requested to join the expanded BRICS Plus group. According to South Africa's Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor, BRICS is now preparing to develop a fairer system of monetary exchange to counteract the dominance of the dollar. BRICS is proposing developing a new global reserve currency based on a basket of the currencies of its members as part of this process, which means that the extended BRICS Plus bloc would be the world's biggest producer of commodities if all of these nations were able to integrate economically and politically. For the US, the warning signs have been coming in for some time. An IMF report issued in 2022 expressed concern over the erosion of dollar dominance and acknowledged that, over the previous 2 decades, the percentage of foreign exchange reserves held in dollars by central banks around the world had decreased from 70% to 60%. As nations targeted by unilateral Western sanctions create new financial systems to trade with their national currencies, the usage of other currencies for commerce in Asia is growing. Without a doubt, West Asia will be the first region to gain from the diplomatic success between Saudi Arabia and Iran, but the geopolitical and economic repercussions will be felt in the entire world. We're living in some interesting times that will be written by historians decades from now as a turning point, reflecting not just China's new position as a peace negotiator on the international scene, but also signifying the end of US hegemony and the emergence of a multipolar world. So, let us know in the comments below what you think about the petrodollar power play, and if this signals the end of US's dominance. We'll see you in the next video.